What's up, John Riley from Hawaii?
Hey, nice to be here.
Nice to see you. Nice to be seen, buddy.
Yeah. I've been looking at all of these cases involving Compass and Zillow and Northwest MLS. And I tell you, everybody's trying to decide what the best route is for the MLSs to go with, to build a system that's based on cooperation. But at the same time, there are issues of how you can market your property uh, at the same time. And of course, one school of thought is you can have and should have mandatory submission of listings into the MLSs. But you have
Yeah.
to temper that with the fact that there does need to be, for good reason, sometimes the pre-marketing of the listings to accommodate the needs of the sellers, for example, who want to do some home improvements prior to the first showing. So that's when people started to introduce the coming soon approach. And so now what we're doing is we're taking a look at the different options that MLSs have to how they handle coming soon, so that they can require mandatory submission, but they can also give some type of leeway for uh, pre-marketing the properties. And so
Okay.
that's what we're
Well,
looking at. And I think that the what's happening with the Northwest MLS and Compass lawsuit, that's where the real action is happening as people try to formulate what the right approach is for handling MLS. So how do you see it?
dude, I see it in a variety of ways here. This is me learning from you guys in the past because we've been doing this now for a while. From what the DOJ has done in the past, they previously, I don't know, and this is where you're going to have to come in. 2005, 2006, maybe around there, the DOJ argued that withholding listings from a type of MLS or a place where they can all be placed so that an audience can see them is anti-competitive. And for Compass and anybody else joining the group to be able to do that again, and now everyone making noise and really pointing at them so that other attorney groups and the DOJ can take a look. I think it creates a problem for our industry in the future for it to be a problem again. And it's just setting up the industry to go into a whole mess load of lawsuits along those lines. I don't see it any other way. John, do you?
No, and we've started to see some of the lawsuits haven't come up with the best approach yet, but we do know that at any moment the DOJ, who's been eyeing this for decades, is going to be perhaps deciding to intervene and say, okay, you guys have not been able to figure it out, and here's what kind of a consent decree that we can work out with you so that you can have cooperation in your MLS amongst horizontal brokers at the same level. You can have that, but there need to be some types of rules where you cannot have exclusionary practices, excluding people. So let's talk about the rules and talk about it in the form of a consent decree. I know you mentioned that the DOJ had been involved earlier in a case involving uh, a way of having listings when they first popped up on the internet. And
Hmm.
they intervened with some initial rulings, but then came up in, I think, 2008 with a consent decree. And
That was
that's
the
when they
one.
had, Yeah, that's the one that was regulating and introducing the concept of VOWs. They had IDX, but now this was VOWs, and they decided to have a 10-year consent decree where people could work out the details of that arrangement. And of course, when the 10 years ended in 2018, that's when there was a new look about, well, what have we learned? You know, what are the procedures? And that resulted in some lawsuits and some action actually by the DOJ themselves, where they wanted to say, we don't think that you've accurately, you know, complied with that. And then you started to get the industry itself changing some of its practices so that they would be consistent with perhaps the DOJ rules, but they also would not be challenging it. You know, I found a quote the other day that I think that kind of sums up where we're headed here. And that the quote is that the next real estate disruption is not going to be technology. It's not going to be anything like artificial intelligence. The real disruption is going to be from the question of who controls the data. That's the focus now. Who controls the data? Is somebody like Compass heading in the direction of, hey, forget the MLS. I think we can create our own database, and we can make. And you're
This is
starting to
true.
see them having partnership arrangements. Compass, a big one, you know, with Rocket, where they
Hmm.
found out that they could have all of the Compass listings Redfin, you know, because of that relationship and that partnership. And now you see also other partners coming along with having special relationships set up. Zillow itself, you know, has set up a new Zillow preview program where they would allow properties to be listed on Zillow as long as they follow some type of coming soon rules. And I think they've made partnerships with almost 30 brokerages. Uh, so you know, you're starting to see where there are people that when they were looking at the MLS, they were kind of in a trap. They either had to make a choice of going along with the MLS rules, submit the property under the mandatory submission rules, but then they'd have to realize that they have to alter their pre-marketing, you know, programs. And others had looked at it and said, you know, we can use these private listings and we can use exclusive listings to a way where we can get our pre-marketing done, but have to get the exposure that we need because of these partnerships.
Take me through, so on that, take me through the Compass versus NWMLS um, lawsuit. What's happening there?
Well, right now it's gone through the stage of the initial you know, complaint, and that was thought to be that Compass had against the MLS, and that complaint was basically dismissed by the court. They they um, they got it to where now NMLS replied to the complaint, which was alleging monopolistic type of practice, you know,
Hmm.
by the regional Northwest MLS, and the MLS came back and counterclaimed against Compass, saying that their practices were anti-competitive, and
Yeah.
that, you know, basically that was then responded to by Compass, coming up with one of its alternative ways to handling it, which wasn't to the satisfaction of the MLS. And then so uh, uh, Compass went ahead and developed a new workaround kind of to the MLS rules. And that's where it stands now. We're waiting for the next step in the discovery, but arguments on both sides have been uh, uh, back and forth, and they're all public for viewing.
Okay,
But
well, let me put that one in pause then, because I feel like we're going through a process that's coming from different angles here for the MLS, for NAR, for different MLSs. That's fragmenting us and it's causing problems. And it's giving more of the power instead of it going directly to the consumer. I feel like it's going the opposite way and it's going to corporations, right? Because who owns Compass? Who owns Remax? Who owns Keller Williams? Who owns all these companies? They're publicly traded or owned by private equity, right?
yeah,
So if we take one step back just for this one, and then I want to take a step forward, is with Zillow and Compass, with what just happened, who won that, even though it was dismissed?
well, I think that Compass is coming out with a pretty strong case, with their response as to at least what I've seen of some of the pleadings in that, and I think they're heading to where they they will probably. I don't think they'll prevail. I actually think that case will be settled, before you come down to a decision. But in the process, anybody has an opportunity that really wants to dig into the details of this uh, dispute between the private listings and the marketing of it. That's a good case. As a matter of fact, in getting ready for this, I took a look at some of the articles that we had in our data advocate,
Yeah.
and I found out that there were over 30 topics that have been covered along the way over the last decade that are relevant to what an MLS board has to look at before they come up with what is their policy going to be. Because I do think the MLSs are going to have to take a step forward now and come up and fine tune their policies. I think they
Yeah,
need.
but when they do that, John, do you think it may be a little bit too late? Because you have, like you said earlier, it's like it's not really who's gonna come up with the best tech or AI. It's really who's controlling the data. And if Compass and Keller and Remax own the majority of the agents, like it's just going to depend on whether or not those large brokerages align with what the MLSs believe. Because if they don't, part of that power is taken away, no?
It is, and I think that some MLSs see it as a real threat, but others see it as an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and come up and clarify what their policies are, so it would satisfy the needs of uh, of the larger firms who want to
Hmm.
do some type of pre-marketing, but they realize the importance of making sure that the pool of buyers is greater by having it in the MLS. So I think you're going to see the MLSs changing their policies to kind of align with both the needs of the listing brokers and also the buyer brokers.
Yeah,
Because
I
I've
agree.
always maintained that what I've seen in the press a lot is an emphasis on more the seller's choice
Hmm.
in how the MLS should be. The sellers say, "Hey, this is my listing. It's my marketing. I need to be in charge of that." But ignored often is what I call the buyer's choice. I mean, and I know you represent in some cases the buyers. And what you
Hmm.
want to have as a buyer, you want to have a MLS that has the most complete data possible. You don't want some of the better listings not in there. You want to be able to use that in how you're able to evaluate a property. Even appraisers want to make
Yep,
sure that the MLS is rich with data. I mean, it's a valuable asset to have, whether
I
you're a
agree.
seller's broker or a buyer's broker. And that's what the MLS boards need to be looking at. And I know that they are looking at that. And speaking of that, there's Mr. Saul Klein, who's
What's up,
part of
Mr.
this
Klein?
board.
Hey, Tristan, John Riley, what's going on, guys?
What's up, buddy? We were talking about how the MLSs, if they're not careful in going back to the drawing board, can lose not only momentum, but a lot of that power that's being taken away by these larger brokerages if they don't align with their beliefs, like a compass, right?
Yeah. So
That's where we were at.
you want to hear what I think about it?
Of course, man. Shoot. Not that, listen,
So
Saul, not that we have a choice here. Come on. I'm
yeah,
going to
no, you
hear it
got that
anyway.
right.
I'm
So
just going to
the
sit back and relax now.
so the
John,
first the first
relax.
piece,
Put your feet up, buddy. Put your feet up.
yeah,
Let's go.
I had to go to the ear doctor.
Okay.
The first piece is mandatory submission. That's a key element that people need to be thinking about. Another key piece is compensation. You don't need to be thinking about that because that was removed a couple years ago, right?
Yep.
Two major pillars of MLS success was compensation, which we've worked around, right? When I say worked around, we've come up with new rules, new laws, new practices. And then this other piece that made MLS so valuable and powerful was mandatory submission. And that's where you had to enter your listings for the good of everyone. You had to enter your listings into the system within a certain period of time, and be it your good listings or your bad listings, you had to enter them into the system. And that worked very well until COVID. And then when COVID hit, we started to see the rise of a lot of private networks.
Yep.
And people, it was, well, why do I need to put it in the MLS? All I got to do is put a sign in the ground. I'll get 20 offers, all of them 20% above the listed price. They'll waive their
True.
inspections and I'll double end it. And so people started withholding from the inventory. And so that's where coming soon came into being. And so now what we see is entities that would like to control the supply and entities that would like to control the demand of the availability of properties for sale, because the availabilities of property for sale is a magnet. It
Hmm.
attracts people. And of course,
That's true.
when I say it attracts people, it attracts potential leads. And so these entities, brokerage firms who have access to MLS data have now started to talk about and actually start to implement the process where there's fragmentation, where the
Hmm.
data will be fragmented. Instead of being able to go to one place, one single source of truth, you're going to find maybe some listings on one website, some listings on another website, and you won't be able to get all of the information in one spot. Now, that will handicap sellers because I'm a believer in distribution trumps destination. The more
Okay.
people you show the property to, I believe the better off you're going to be. Now, there are exceptions to this, but I think exposure is what sells real estate. And so the more, if in fact it can be exposed to a lot of people, then there's a great opportunity to get the best deal. Also, it is that benefits the seller, it benefits the listing agent. A buyer broker only
Hmm.
has to go to one spot to find everything that's available. Appraisers depend upon the data that's there. The secondary
Hmm.
money market, uh, which really makes buying homes possible, they depend upon accurate valuations. And if you start to break this up into pieces, there's going to be a lot of detriment to it. So I think that over time, people will start to realize the value that MLS brings. And
Hmm.
but right now we're going through this shakeout period. So all of these major portals, they want to have inventory that other people don't have. So they're all clamoring for coming soon. They all
Yeah.
want the coming soon. And so I heard a statistic the other day. I don't know if it's right, but it makes the point that about one third of the MLSs have coming soon policy where they distribute the coming soons in their IDX and Realtor.com or syndication feeds. About one third of the MLSs have a coming soon policy and they don't distribute it. And about one third don't have a coming soon policy. So you remember when we're going through all this coming soon, it was okay, we want coming soon, and how many days can it be coming soon? And is days on market going to show? And are we going to see price resets? Right, all these different factors are now in play. And
Yeah.
so
Very true.
MLSs across the country are looking at their coming soon policies. They're trying to figure out what's in the best interest for their subscribers and participants. Again, I'm an
Hmm.
advocate for let if it's for sale, it's for sale. Let people see
Yeah.
it. And but this is definitely a transition period when we're all going to have to work through and figure out what's best for our customers.
I agree, man. I'm going to touch on Claire and Susan on their comment. Claire said with AI search, will it eventually matter where the listings are live, assuming it's on the web? The Wild West of is the data current? And then Susan mentioned something similar along those lines. Let me see if I can find it. Can't find it, but oh, how will AI search play into everything? Well, listen, you've got Zillow as a full-on app in ChatGPT. You've got Redfin, which plays with Compass now as a full-on app on ChatGPT. I'm sure you're not far behind, or Compass isn't far behind getting a full-on app now that Realtor.com has one in ChatGPT. So if you go to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me all the latest listings from all the portals and show them to me here, that won't be a problem. It will be what does it look like, exactly what Saul said, as far as relevant data, right? It's no longer going to be transparent. How do we know when this came on? Is it on? Can I show it, right? Who do I reach out to? Because we know Compass wants to, my opinion, Compass wants to double end things to make more money because they owe it to their shareholders to make more money. It's a publicly traded company, right? So that's just my opinion. Now, when I look at this, yeah, AI makes it easier, but still, it's still a data play, and people want to keep things, they want to gatekeep things like if it's 1990. And Saul's right. This isn't going to last long because if it's not the DOJ or somebody on the government side who who flags this, it's probably going to be a class action lawsuit where these attorneys are paying attention and saying, "All right, sellers, raise your hand. Who thinks they could have sold their home on the market on the MLS, but you felt like you were steered a little bit by Compass and you didn't end up getting the amount of money you just enough of those. It's a class action lawsuit. And all of a sudden, what does Compass do? Right? They pivot because that's coming.
Well,
Saul,
yeah,
what do you think?
there's no doubt that's a definitely a scenario that could play itself out. And but you look at AI, and it's hard for anybody to predict 2 years down the road on with AI. But the fact is, you still need to have a a single source of truth. Yeah, people could put this up on the web in a lot of different places, but who's going to validate and verify that it's actually true? Who's going to minimize the fraud that might take place or listings that aren't really listings? And so the business rules that go behind the creation of an MLS and the sustainability of an accurate database of properties for sale is still not something AI has figured out. And again, everybody could put their listings up. People could fraudulently put listings up. AI can go out and collect all of this and bring it together and at some point figure out what's true and what's not true. But we're not close to that yet. And then we do see, as you mentioned, Tristan, we do see all the big players integrating some sort of AI solution into their offerings, right?
We do see that, man. So what do either of you see next? Is it too early to tell? Because I do see we're now completely split, right? You're either on the side that wants to have um, you want to have a walled garden around your data, or you want to have it open to everyone, and you want to play, I guess you want to play in a market that allows it to go up to the best
Well,
possible price.
here's an interesting thought, and that is there are a lot of agents that do not want to disclose days on market, and they do
Yeah.
not want to disclose price changes during coming soon. Now, I'm not saying that's right or that's wrong. I just know there are a lot of agents that believe that it's not in the best interest of their sellers to show that kind of information.
Yeah,
And
I agree
so,
with you on that. Yeah.
right? But here's the thing. So let's say that an MLS decides to distribute their coming soon listings to the portals because the sellers want their listings on the portals typically. If you distribute your listings as an MLS to uh, websites that download that data, they're going to know how many days it's been on the market. They're going to know the price set. And so if you agree to syndicate or to distribute, what you're also doing is you're giving certain websites the ability to know how many days that property's been on market. And I mean, that could be an unintended consequence of people. They say, I don't want people to know it, but I want it to be available to Zillow. Well, if you make it available, know that they're going to know other things and they might
True.
not be in alignment with what you believe is in your best interest. So there's some getting used to and there's some understanding that needs to take place. And again, we're just looking at this as an MLS. We're looking at seeing all of the portals we talk to say that they would prefer to get their coming soon. And why do they want coming soon data? Because it's not on the market yet. They would prefer to get the coming soon information from MLSs because let the MLS do the hard work of collecting and maintaining. And if as a portal, you have a choice where you get the data. Who would you rather take it from? An agent who uploads it themselves or from an MLS that has rules around trying to keep that data fresh and accurate? And the conversations we've had, most of the portals will say they'd rather get it from the MLS. Now, they'll also say, but if we can't get it from the MLS, then we're going to figure out ways we can get it. We're going to go to the broker and see if the broker will give us a feed. We'll create an ad edit capability to let agents put the information here. And then from a portal perspective, if you're a portal and you get information from an MLS, you get information from a broker, and you get information from a listing agent, which one are you going to display? And so I've always called that the authoritative source. Back in the days when John Reilly and I were created a syndication capability and went to MLSs and we got the data from MLSs and we would give that data to those portals that wanted it. Zillow is an example. We would say to the portals, we got this data from the MLS and we're going to give it to you to display on your portal, but you have to promise if you get the data from other sources that our source is authoritative, that you will show our data and not the data you receive somewhere else. And if you don't want to play by that rule, then go get the data somewhere else because we're going to offer you the cleanest, freshest, best data available. And but we expect you to use it. We expect you to make it authoritative. So that's an old term that I used back in 2008, but I think it's going to become relevant again.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Jerry brings up a good point. You could have AI get MLS data and add it to other scraping being done online and give it a reliability weighting score and make it transparent. Jerry, AI is going to add another layer of complexity to this whole thing longer term. But I think what you start seeing as AI settles in over the next few years is there will be rules in the Wild West that will make it the lesser Wild West. We just have to catch up to those rules. It'll be a little bit, but I think it also gives time to for the consumer to decide, is this fair for us or not? And I think that's to us, that's like the number one thing. What does a consumer think above all else? Because Compass and those that agree with Compass say it's all about the consumer, right? Well, let's see what is it all about the consumer?
You know,
For
that's a great point, Tristan. Think about this, because some of the people are saying seller's choice.
hmm
And then people are saying, well, we think it hurts the seller if the public knows how long the property's been on the market. And if you heard that today, hey, this property's been on the market 275 days, what would you think? You'd think there's probably something wrong with the property, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if there have been 20 price adjustments, right? So the seller and what listing brokers, some of them are saying is, hey, we don't want everybody to know that because that handicaps the seller. But the other side of the coin is, do you think that might be relevant information to a buyer? You think a
Yeah,
buyer would
of
want to know
course.
how long the property has been on the market or how many times the price has been reset? So,
Dude.
it's like you can make a case both ways, right?
That's the buyer's choice.
Buyer's
Yeah.
choice.
That's what John was saying right before you stepped in. Buyer's choice, right?
And what Saul mentioned, my fear is the fragmentation that could take place, where anybody can get the information any place. You need one source of truth. And, I think the MLS can provide that. One avenue is you could use a little bit, of the short period of time for coming soon to allow sellers who need time to get the property cleaned up and ready, or for whatever reason, if you have like a short period of time for that. But that's a possible avenue to take a look at.
And you know
Yeah.
what? I'm just looking at something here because the other day this came to mind. When we, and I say we because I was on the original Realtor.com team. So I was like the first guy that was on the original Realtor.com team when Realtor.com was owned by NAR. And when the whole idea of putting
Wow.
listings on the web, that was a brand new idea. And somebody had to go out and convince the industry that this was a valuable thing to use the web for marketing. And we were all
hmm
afraid of public access to MLS back in those days. And so I created all the original marketing pieces. I went out and did all of the speaking on the World Wide Web and why it made sense to put your listings on the web. And one of the things that we used to say was the way that you convince people or sell people, three things you need: fear, greed, and love. Right? So if you can introduce into your presentations three things: fear, greed, and love, then you're probably going to make the sale. And so I had to create a document, and I just dug this up because what we were afraid of back in 1995 was that the number one thing we were afraid of with the web was fragmentation. We thought that fragmentation would damage the real estate industry. And so I've got the slide in front of me,
Yeah,
and I'm going to
of
read it to
course.
you. I called it Internet Advertising Issues. And the first piece was critical mass, because if you went out and searched, and back in those days, you didn't have Google to search, you had like Alta Vista and Yahoo. And if you searched for real estate, you would there was like 2,000 different websites, and each one had two or three listings.
Yeah.
And that was not very consumer friendly. So I'm looking at my slide now. It says current fragmentation weakens a realtor's position. Classified ads are effective because they're all in one place in the newspaper. So people would go to the newspaper because they got the classified ad all in one spot. There are over 5,000 current real estate websites. This is in 1995. Continued fragmentation will allow non-traditional services to gain a foothold. It's prescient, huh? Non-traditional services are not necessarily industry friendly. Fragmentation confuses the consumer, making most internet advertising less effective. And that was my case for when all realtors market their listings on realtor.com. This was before there were a lot of places to advertise.
Before
Uh,
Zillow.
there was no Zillow at that time, right? It was
hmm
realtor.com, homes.com, and Home Seekers were the three primary sites in
Oh, I
19.
remember Home Seekers.
Yep, and then Home Advisor, which was Microsoft's play. So We all benefit from each other's advertising, and consumers quickly learn that there's one place to go for information when property's for sale. So the idea in 95, and this is why we created Realtor.com, and I'm not associated with Realtor.com anymore, but I was then because I was the advocate and the voice for
Hmm.
Realtor.com. And the number one fear was fragmentation. And so, what are
Yeah.
we afraid of today? Fragmentation, right? We're talking
Well, listen,
fragmentation being an issue.
most of the consumers are concerned about fragmentation. Real estate agents, some of them, want fragmentation because they can control the data. They can control, like you said, it's the people. It's all about the people. They can control the lead routing. They can control who they're going to send who to. So, yeah, man, look, it's common sense. We just lost it. That's it. And if you're real with you, not you guys, but if you're real with yourself and you're like, who is this really good for? Oh, got it. The brokerage, right? That's when you're not bullshitting yourself. But other than that, you just have something in front of you and you can't see straight. That's it.
Yeah, well, John and I were talking about this the other day. As you look at this fragmentation and who really benefits from it, and MLSs for a while could end up being like commercial MLSs where people only put their crappy listings in,
Yes, I've seen that.
right? The ones they can't
Terrible.
sell, they'll put
Yeah,
those in. So
that's
it's
funny.
still too early. Everybody's still
Yeah.
trying to figure this out. All the brokerage firms are trying to figure out how they're going to compete.
Yes,
And
they are.
right, and there's no doubt that listings are a marketing asset. Think about this. I used to say this, when you get the listing, you put a sign in the ground. Do you invite all your competitors to come put their sign in the ground on your listing?
Yeah, no.
No, you want people driving by to see your name. You don't want them to see everybody. So what, because of the leads you might be able to derive from that.
Yeah,
And
of
so,
course.
right, so we're all just kind of redealing with this issue right now, and different folks have different ideas, and it will all shake out. But it's almost like it's time for the DOJ. I hate
That's
to say
crazy.
it, but
Yeah.
it's like somebody maybe it's time to come in and do what's in the best interest of the consumer.
Yeah, man. Or, those guys that keep on popping up and do the same lawsuit over and over again. Those guys, it's time for those guys. Maybe they can
Yeah.
play on the right side this time.
Attorneys are making money; they're laughing all the way to the bank.
They're still laughing. Anyway, guys, thanks for doing this. John, Saul, I'm glad you guys are good. We'll see you in about 2 weeks. We'll see what happens then. Everybody else, thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Good to see you,
Have an awesome
Tristan.
day.
Take care.
Thank